So a couple days ago in my news feed, I see Mötley Crüe, and I didn't realize they were doing this, but apparently they're going back and they're playing a couple shows in some of the smaller places back in Los Angeles. And I saw this article, and I thought it would be fun or interesting, as I've done a few times on this channel, to go back and find a newspaper article, if I can, from back when they were originally playing these places back in Los Angeles when they first started. And I found something really cool I think you're going to find interesting. But here's the article that I saw that got my attention, and it says, watch Mötley Crüe arrive to their Hollywood concert in style by driving out the back of a garbage truck. The rock band is currently in the midst of a 3-date Hollywood takeover of small LA venues, kicked off October 7th at the Troubadour. No one makes an entrance quite like Mötley Crüe. This is from People magazine. The rock band is currently in the midst of a 3-date Hollywood takeover tour of small Los Angeles venues that kicked off October 7th at the Troubadour. And members Tommy Lee, Vince Neil, Nikki Sixx, and John 5, of course, rolled up to the venue in a garbage truck. So I don't know if you probably realize this if you follow Mötley Crüe, but John 5 is playing and not Mick Mars. And I have mixed feelings about that whole thing. I actually have mixed feelings about all the stuff because they were supposed to not be together anymore. They had that big thing they did about we're never going to play it again. They had the contract that they signed. Anyway, and then I was kind of okay with it, and I like John 5 because he's cool. But I've had mixed feelings about all this stuff. But Mötley Crüe, I love the early days of Mötley Crüe especially because I remember where I was the first time I heard Mötley Crüe. And I think with like a lot of people, that first album, Too Fast for Love, that first song, Live Wire, when you hear that guitar start, and it doesn't even sound like a guitar, it sounds like an engine. I remember, I don't know how old I was when I first heard that, 12, 11, something like that. Hey, hold on for just a second, we'll get right back to the video. But if you like this stuff, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, leave any comments. We'd love to hear from you, and we really, really appreciate it. Anyway, with that, back to the video. And that growl was so unbelievable. And so I've been kind of a Mötley Crüe fan ever since then. So I'm I'm interested in them, especially this period of time because they self-released that first album, Too Fast for Love. And that first song was so brutal. It's so good. So let's see. So in a video shared by Girls, 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 the Girls, Girls, Girls group on YouTube, a garbage truck pulls up to the Troubadour and parks. A bunch of garbage bags, a mattress fall out, then out of the back. And Lee, 62, isn't that hard to believe? Tommy Lee, 62 years old, dives out of the truck into a pile, followed by other members as the crowd cheers. Mic'd up and ready for the show, Mötley Crüe then walks through a crowd of fans outside before entering the venue and walking on stage. Okay, as part of the Hollywood Takeover Tour, the band will perform October 9th at the Roxy and October 11th at the Whiskey A Go-Go. And that's the one I think many of us have heard of over the years. Them playing in was the Whiskey. You know, they're just really well known for that, being in that particular venue. And I tell you, that first album, again, Too Fast for Love, was so great. That whole first side of that album was incredible. The second side, there were a couple songs on there. I think was PC or Action on the second side, and Too Fast for Love. I can't remember, but there was a couple songs on the second side that were amazing. Then Shout at the Devil came out, and I loved every single song on that album. And then Theater of Pain, I didn't care much for it, including Home Sweet Home. Didn't do much for me. Girls, 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 even with Wild Side, didn't like that much. And then Dr. Feelgood, the song I liked, but Kickstart My Heart might have been, I still think that may be, between that one and Live Wire, my ultimate favorite songs by these guys. So anyway, So I reminiscing a little bit again that they're playing back in Los Angeles. I went and found this article, which I'll read to you here. And this was Los Angeles Times, December 29th, 1981. And this is just a little review about Mötley Crüe, who was just kind of up and coming at the time. So, catching Mötley Crüe in a flash. In just 8 months, Mötley Crüe has risen to headline status on the local heavy metal scene. Based on the quartet's Friday night performance at the Country Club, it appears this meteoric ascent is more a result of the attention generated by the group's extremely exaggerated image than by anything remotely resembling musical innovation. Sporting spiked heels, form-fitting leathers, belts fashioned from handcuffs, and great haystack shag haircuts, Mötley Crüe harkens back to the classic 1973 definition of rock and roll, quote, flash, as originally set down by Rod Stewart, Queen, and the New York Dolls. Unfortunately, Mötley Crüe's music doesn't draw from the same sources. Instead, the group relies on virtually the same prefab melange of mostly Led Zeppelin licks as proffered by almost all their competitors. Although an airtight unit, the band's individual musicianship is nothing to write home about. And while their staging is certainly professional, Mötley Crüe didn't expend an inordinate amount of energy on stage either. And that actually surprised me reading that. Because, I don't know that there's really a lot of footage of what it was like. Of course, you see the biopic of that, I can't remember what it was called, of them recreating what they were on stage. But I didn't expect them to say that they didn't expend a lot of energy on stage in this article. I thought that was kind of interesting because if I would imagine what they would have been like back at that point, it would have been a really, really wild show just based on the clothes they were wearing and the style they had. Anyway. Okay, lead vocalist Vince Neil has all the prerequisite prancing and preening down stone cold, but his muscle tone suggests he's never listed. Okay, I got to read this clearly because it's so funny. But his muscle tone suggests he's never lifted anything heavier than his mic stand, making it hard to take his sex symbol posturing seriously. That's pretty funny. Mötley Crüe's sole moments of musical memorability came courtesy of the title track of their self-financed album, Too Fast for Love, and the spirited Toast of the Town. Now, which is interesting because Toast of the Town, at least on my version of Too Fast for Love, it's not on there. And I think it might have been on the original Leather Records version of that. I'm not sure. And it's not I don't know. It's not my favorite song in the world, but it made an appearance on Regular Show. My son loved Regular Show, and it was just a silly cartoon. And for some reason, they had this. I think it was Toast of the Town was on there once, and it just kind of strange. Okay, anyway, so the former, referring to Too Fast for Love, is a punchy runaround on Zeppelin's classic Boogie with Stu, which I never really made the connection, but. Riff, and the latter was as close to Chin Chapman era Sweet as the evening got. And if you know anything about Nikki Sixx, you know he was a big Sweet fan. He loved them, and so you can actually and you can in that song too. Although the guitars are so distorted, but you can hear a little bit of that Sweet influence in that song for sure. In the song Toast of the Town. Arguably, the most interesting thing about the show was the block-long line of predominantly high school-age kids waiting to get inside the packed club. However, once inside, they seemed more curious than excited by the proceedings, suggesting that even a band predicated on flash could benefit from a little substance. So anyway, this guy obviously wasn't too impressed with their music, and anyway, didn't seem too impressed with them in general. But it's so interesting to hear this stuff, that this is what people were saying back in 1981 about this band. And of course now, we have, 40 years of history to look back and see where they went and how huge. I mean, they became so big. It's just unbelievable. And I saw them in concert. I don't know, it seems like I've seen them a few times. And they were never, they were never a great, in my opinion, they were never a great live band. And partly because for some reason, Vince Neil's voice was always just kind of lost in the mix. But they were but I loved, Nikki Sixx is such a great songwriter. And what's funny, just as a side note, they had so many great tunes in those, with Mötley Crüe, especially those first couple of albums. Like I said, I didn't care much for the Theater of Pain or Girls, 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 but I loved, Dr. Feelgood. The song Dr. Feelgood is pretty cool, but especially, anyway. 6 a.m. is another band that Nikki Sixx put together. And I got to tell you, for me personally, I loved that music more than I loved really any of the Mötley Crüe stuff. I thought that Nikki had really matured as a songwriter, and the stuff that he did there, it just never really took off. But I went and saw them in concert at the Ogden Theater in Denver, Colorado. This would have been, 7-8 years ago. But it was just awesome. And I bought a couple the CDs that they put out, with 6 a.m. And I thought it was just, anyway, I loved it. I thought it was amazing. I know a lot of Mötley Crüe fans weren't so into it, but I thought he was just spectacular. And it wasn't until that band came out, and then I started listening to some of the biographies, that I realized that Nikki Sixx really was the songwriter and the driving force behind the band. I didn't realize it when we were kids, and I would listen to Mötley Crüe. I didn't understand that he was the guy doing all this stuff. I'm a 12-year-old boy buying their stuff, and all I see is the cool images, and he was an afterthought for me. But then you realize later that was the guy that really, really was the driving force, the songwriter. And of course they all had their own, they kind of, the four of them together just made this really, really cool thing. Anyway, thought you'd find that interesting. I love looking at these old articles and hearing what people were saying at the time. And so hope you enjoyed that too. Anyway, so with that, of course, like the video, please subscribe to the channel, leave any comments. If you have any experiences with Mötley Crüe, what you thought about some of this stuff, I'd love to hear about it. And with that, of course, have a fantastic day.